Thank you everyone for joining in. Just a reminder, we'll be starting in 2 minutes. We'll be starting at exactly 2:05. So we're just waiting for a couple of more minutes so everyone can join in, and then we'll be shortly beginning with our webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be beginning with our session now. It's 2:05. So welcome to the jointly organized KPMG and Karan Das webinar on driving digital payments in e-commerce through market interventions. I am Malik Haider Iqbal, Senior Consultant for KPMG and part of the team that crafted this report. I'm also your host for today's event. I'm thrilled to have all of you join for this insightful session. Before we dive into the heart of our discussion, let me take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished speakers, participants, and guests. Today's webinar is a collaborative effort, and we have a fantastic lineup of speakers who bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to this virtual stage. We'll be exploring and gaining valuable insights into specific interventions. The agenda for today's event will encompass a brief introduction and overview of the project, after which KPMG will be presenting its key findings and recommendations. Following that, we'll be opening the floor for a detailed Q&A session on the proposed recommendations. Now, without further ado, let's get started by handing over to our very first speaker who will set the stage for us. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sharjeel Murtaza, Director of Digital Financial Services at Karan Das, who will provide us with a background and overview of this intriguing project we're here to discuss. Sharjeel, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon all. So thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity, Heather. I would start off with, first of all, thanking the KPMG team here, who have actually partnered with Karan Das to put this all-important report together. And finally, we are here today where we can share it with the industry. And we sincerely hope that the report and its findings can actually be capitalized upon or leveraged by the industry players to take the e-commerce space forward. As a background, I would just like to say a few things here. So why did Karan Das pick up this segment? Basically, this is not the only segment or the only value chain that we are focusing on at the moment. Having played our role of an enabler over the last several years, and with the huge success in the shape of RAST, which is the instant payment system that's in place and you all are well aware of, we are now thoroughly committed to adoption of digital payments. Now, obviously, it's a huge space and a space which has literally been hardly touched by any segment of the industry. We thought that we will start picking up segments with the highest potential or where we can find quicker traction. So this year, we picked up two value chains. One was the agriculture and the other was the e-commerce. So we have actually done two value chain assessments in parallel. The agriculture assessment has also been a success, and very soon the agriculture segment related industry players would start hearing about it, and then we will have similar sort of a report for them to leverage on. And here is the e-commerce space, which has been put together with the help from KPMG team here. So once again, thank you very much, KPMG team, and of course, all the key industry players who have actually participated in this in the background, because KPMG team did not do it all on their own. They actually went out, engaged with a lot of key industry players, and basically gathered all their thoughts and problem statements to bring it all together. The idea is to promote digital payments as much as possible. With the instant payment system in place, there is no reason that we can actually move, cash payments to digital payments. We have a lot of global success stories, which are also highlighted in the report, which actually show that the key success factor for the e-commerce space or digital payments to actually increase has been, introduction of such systems or other infrastructure level interventions. So that being done, I don't see that there is any reason that we cannot jump onto this opportunity collectively and take the agenda of digital payments forward. RAS, the person to merchant payment, or P2M as it's more famously known as, has been launched recently as well. I'm sure you all are well aware. So that's a great breakthrough too for the entire retail segment. I would just like to highlight a couple of key statistics that we all know about. We are very well aware of it. I mean, Pakistan relatively has a very low smartphone penetration, sitting around 31, 32%. Similarly, the amount of banked population sits at a very meager 21%. Despite those numbers being low, what's almost shocking to see is that the e-commerce and the digital payments in e-commerce are only contributing towards, a meager 1.5%, I think, of the entire GDP. So that's where I see that, there's a low-hanging fruit. We need to collectively make an effort to at least start leveraging the 21% banked people, which means that there's 21% population who have a financial instrument that can be used online. But still a vast majority is triggering a transaction, is triggering a purchase online, however, choosing to pay in a non-digital way, primarily cash on delivery. So that, I know, I'm sure it's easier said than done, but at least that appears to be the low-hanging fruit. That's what we need to collectively target. As Karandas, I would just like to say here that this study is just the beginning. This report is just the beginning. The idea is to identify opportunities, the viable opportunities, and if the industry or the ecosystem requires any further support from Karandas to make things happen, to get the digital payments rolling, we would be available and we would be more than willing to partner with the industry, with the key players to take this agenda forward. With that, I think there's a lot of good discussion to be held on this forum, and there are a lot of experts who would talk about the details of the report. So I would not like to hog the light for too long. I think it's good timing. I would pass it on to Taimur Ali, who is the group head for digital financial services here at Karandas, to basically introduce you all to the high-level findings of the report, and then the agenda can continue. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for the participation. Over to you, Taimur.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the session. Pretty excited to launch it today for the industry. I think what's more important to understand here is what's the play that Karandas has in the e-commerce value chain. We have the larger objective of digitizing payments in Pakistan. When we were analyzing and shortlisting value chains, we understood that e-commerce is growing at 35%, which humongous $6 billion worth of transactions happening in this value chain. The ministry, reports 55% cash on delivery. However, the payments gateway data shows that there's still 80 to 85% cash on delivery happening in this value chain. So huge potential in digitizing the payments, and that is where Karandas play comes in. It is important to understand that the objectives that we have set for this study are threefold. First of all, we wanted to create a program that should result into digitizing payments. When I say program, so this current report that we are presenting is the first element of the effort that has been done in partnership with KPMG. So there's a program that Karandas has created, and subsequently we'll be advertising multiple interventions. And please be ready for those where Karandas support will be available in order to transform from cash to digital. The second objective that we have is to stretch ourselves as we are conventionally working on digital of systems, digitizing of payments, creating instruments, creating infrastructures that result in digitizing of payments. However, when we have taken the value chain view, we understand that there are certain in order for digital payments to pick up, and that necessarily not mean integration of payment gateways, or that necessarily not means incentivizing users to just shift from cash-based payment to digital-based payment. So what effectively it could mean is introducing escrow, introducing services that build trust in consumer in order to start using digital payments. So that is the stretch that Karandas has committed to make in this value chain. Thirdly, we also have seen while doing this report that there's a lot of information that is missing. There's no center point where information is created and leveraged by multiple players in order to kind of intervene in the value chain and then start working for the development of it. So we'll be creating a lot of information as an objective that we have taken for Karandas. Way forward from here is that we want to identify adoption gaps and address one by one. As a part of that, we have already advertised a program called Digitizing Cash on Delivery. Some of you, the first bit of it. So we will go into the market advertising different programs, partnering with different value chain players in order to support the digitization for the value chain. Like Shujil mentioned, you can reach out to Karandas directly if you are an active e-commerce value chain player, whether it be a logistics firm, whether it be an integrator, or a payment gateway, a marketplace that wants to, kind of embark on the journey of greater transformation from cash to digital. So Karandas is in a receptive mode to listen to any such proposals. Lastly, there are some findings of the report where we have identified that there are certain regulatory policy related matters that needs to be settled, whether it's, like I mentioned, escrow, whether it's centralization of data, a data portal, or maybe a centralized repository, an organization that needs to be created. Maybe there is a review system that is required of the platforms which will build trust. And certainly the gateway integration with multiple merchants is something that takes a lot of time and needs to be addressed, the usability part of it. So these interventions are some of those that we have folded as a part of the study, and our team from KPMG will deep dive into that. But these are the sort of activities that we are excited to work with on different partners. With that, I would hand over to Rana Nadeem Saab, who is the partner at KPMG. There's a deep dive on the report and pretty exciting stuff to unfold. Over to you, Nadeem Saab.
Thank you very much, Taimur. And the excitement is such that we all have already started talking about the subjects today. And in this limited amount of time, this is a vast subject. Dear all, thank you very much for joining. And Assalamu alaikum to all. This is a very big subject, and my job today would be to, in this short time, to arrange a focus for you all so that we can talk about the things which are actually the outcomes or the recommendations, and which will really form the part of this overall intervention program, which will be led by Karandas. And in the coming days, as Taimur just said, that they've already started cash on delivery area. So in the coming days, you will see many of the recommendations that we will discuss. Those will be available for participation for the industry players, and once completed, those will be available for adoption at a larger scale. So just to arrange a focus, as I call it, we need to talk about which industry we are operating. We need to talk about who we are, how we work with Karandas, right? And who are the industry players where we contacted them. I should thank all of them. If I may share my screen. Yeah. Can anyone confirm?
Not
No,
visible.
we can't see it right now.
It's not visible yet.
Okay.
And Rana Sahib, if I may, there's a lot of feedback coming through that if we can actually use Urdu. I don't think हमारे पास कोई international इस वक्त listeners हैं होंगे भी तो we can probably do subtitles later on. So if you can at least a blend, I think that.
It's always pleasure. तो आज जो हम बात करना चाह रहे हैं, obviously I cannot speak purely in Urdu. Now, the subject is so broad कि we need to narrow it down. और हमें ये देखना पड़ेगा कि वो कौन सी चीजें हैं which Karandaz as a catalyst can ignite for you all, and while we can curse the current situation, curse the darkness that we have, but there are candles which we can be lit, and Karandaz has started this thing. We are very happy to participate and be part of it, and as a result, we are here in front of you. The focus of this 30 minutes will primarily be discussing the recommendations, followed by our esteemed panel, where we can really discuss them in more detail and explain them. And as Taimur said, the way forward is each one of them ideally, but most of them will be visible and available to you all to see how these impact in achieving the objective of reducing the cash. I usually say, at least in the e-commerce value chain, where already electronic channels are in place. So if I just introduce the team, how it was structured, and exactly the same way it is structured today, I should thank the Karandaz team, where Sharjeel, Taimur, and Sana, they were coordinating, and they really helped us do this task. Then I should thank Adam and Omar bin Hassan, who really worked as subject matter experts for the whole team. And then I have the KPMG team, where Rafe, Heather, Aisha, Zan, and they were all there. But above all, we formed a working group, and that working group included really, I must say, the celebrities of this domain. And we were very thankful to Rehan Saab, Hamad, right, Hassan, Asfandiar, who's very active on the media as well, Fawad. Like, they all really shared their thoughts, and they really were the door openers for us to do and reach out to the information which is required to be analyzed to form a view or a conclusion around it. If I move forward, there are many things which we can talk about. And there are, for today, many things which we should not talk about at this point in time. For example, if we start discussing about the economy, we all understand that high cash in circulation has its deep roots in inflation, in access to financial services, internet, undocumented economy, right? Our geopolitical situations, the GDP, all these things we know. But we also know that we are more than 240 million consumers. And the more we adopt these channels, the more is, the bigger is the opportunity that we have. Then we mentioned about the smartphone penetration. Yes, 31% is much lower than 80-89% in the region. If we talk about the financial inclusion, right, it is like not good enough. Right? 21% bank accounts, 15% or 13% of the people having debit cards, and which most of the time they're using to withdraw cash. Only 1% people have the credit cards. And this will clearly indicate that we don't have the credit scores. And this whole value chain of the digital payments, which actually has helped the businesses to grow by providing them the working capital finance or access to credit, it's a long journey and a bigger opportunity for the financial sector players. Similarly, I would like to share that I was just browsing through the Twitter. I saw a tweet reply coming from the current IT minister. Somebody asked, what is the status of Starlink and PayPal in Pakistan? And he said, we are almost there. And I really hope if things are happening in all those domains, the interventions or the recommendations that we have in this report really going to be augmented, and we can accelerate the progress on that. Now, we have reviewed many peer markets. And when I see the cash in circulation, I would just go very quickly through that. Our cash in circulation is continuously increasing, whereas the world is focusing on reducing that cash in circulation. Yes, we have inflation. Yes, we have open market operations trend where the money is thrown into the market, right? All these things are there. But what we can do, keeping all these variables in mind and hoping that a lot is being done, right? And we just need to speed up and support this. Similarly, my personal view is in digitizing an economy, it has to be government-led, right? Through a well-coordinated policy-backed national agenda, providing enablers to the market as being done through this venture coming from the Karandas. And above all, the government has to do this self-adoption. Self-adoption is fundamental. G2B, B2G is easier as done by our neighbors. Whatever we do, the fundamental thing in policy making and advising is it has to make a business sense. So these are the two things which I personally wanted to state, that all such activities will take a scale when these are government-led and will be participated by most of the participants if it is making a commercial sense. Having said that, I would not shy away by quoting the examples of India, where a market of 42 trillion rupees, Indian rupees, expanded to 166 trillion in just a matter of 3 years, 2019 to 23. Right? Why? Right? They were strong enablers, which we also need. And many of the participants of this webinar would be thinking that in the absence of that, how can we progress? Yes, those are needed and we recognize that, but those are not the subjects of today's discussion. We know that they have a UPI, they have an interoperable payment system, they have lower transaction costs. These are all the learning areas where we, the government and the policymakers and the market players have to think on those lines. Similarly, in terms of the market size, right, there are not many discussions. Some is an interpolation approach that, okay, we have a state bank data base from where we can see that how many transactions have happened online. And if we can take a percentage of COD, we can predict it. Or there is a report stating that 18% of our GDP is retail sector, and out of that 10% is B2C retail, right? So we can see a market coming from 4 to 6 billion, but the potential, 240 million people, all spending, all eating, wearing, everything, right? So the potential is much, much bigger. Lastly, in my statements, the regulatory elements. A lot has been done in our country in terms of regulations. Just to quote a couple of examples, I'll come back to a couple of slides. For example, we have things like Digital Pakistan policy, e-commerce policy. We have RAST as a success story, National Financial Inclusion Strategy, and so on. But have all those yielded the impacts the way they were planned? Again, I would say has to be government-led, coordinated, and making business sense for everyone. We conducted the surveys as well, how consumers are thinking, how general common people are thinking, right? We asked them, what is the payment mode you prefer? 80% openly said, we prefer COD, cash on delivery, right? Cards, mobile wallets, bank transfers, very meager, very small. Similarly, we asked them that if we prove that the vendor or the merchant is very reliable and having a very up-to-mark system of payments, all that, will you do that? Right? The answer was promising. Yes, we need some trust and reliability. Similarly, how you choose purchasing online, right? People are aware that they can review the social media and the other feedback platforms, right? Similarly, brand reputation. So why I'm linking these things is that in e-commerce, the commercial transaction the trust on the commercial transaction is actually the root cause of choices between cash or the digital payments. So we cannot see these two things separately. So that is a preamble to this whole scenario before I jump onto the challenges. I'm just using one slide which is extracted from my report, and what we can think about these is we view what kind of challenges are faced by merchants when they operate in this domain, right? From customers, from suppliers, from payment service providers, from technology and logistics service providers. So all this need to be understood in more detail before we can suggest some recommendations. But bear with me that all that we will state here may not be a short-term and easy low-hanging fruit. It will include long-term policy measures and adoption by various stakeholders. But as challenges, we have highlighted them, and I will quickly browse through those so that I can share the background that why we are recommending that something should happen and which can be managed at the catalysts of the market like Karandas, and which can be funded, of course. No funding can match the government plans or a national level agenda. But as I said that, we are here to light the candles. Financial inclusion we have discussed, right? And this is the first one. We are operating in an economy where there's a very low rate, 21%, or there are other percentages coming, smartphone ownership, right? Access to formal financing, internet availability or the continuity and the speed. All are the problems that we face on a very daily basis. Then on a behavioral side or on a psychological side, there's still a perception that cash is cheaper and convenient. Our consumers are really skeptic that first I will see what I have received, right? First I will check that, only then I'm happy to pay the cash, right? Brand reputations. I just want to buy what I have ordered. This is such a fundamental concept, and there are limited grievance redressals and all those things. I can just recall the conversations in the two recent reports that we have done and the surveys or the field visits that we have conducted. There is a very fundamental trust deficit which we need to address if we really want to boost up the digital payments. If I move forward, what suppliers are thinking, suppliers are operating, and I have the benefit of having Omar in my team who's dealing with and who's on a journey of digitizing the supply chains. Right? The fundamental issue is that they're happily operating in an informal business landscape. Right? Most of, and this debate can go to that why we are undocumented, why we are cash-based, why we prefer cash, right? Why there are like 30 plus banks in this country with having around like 5,000, 7,000 branches. What we are doing, right? So all these questions setting aside, this remains a challenge. The whole supplier side stays informal. The root cause, one of them is also the taxation side of it. Taxation is not considered to be equitable or manageable. And the common sense will involve if somebody is taxed and somebody is not taxed, commercially, the taxpayer goes worse off because the cost to do the business in the longer run, all taxes are direct and they are getting billed into the whole cost structure of that value chain. And if somebody is not paying and somebody is paying, the cost to sell or the cost of the product is as such that it's not comparable. So we are operating in an economy where there are people who can avoid or evade taxes and they can offer better discounts as compared to the formal taxpayers. So this remains a bigger challenge. I should stop here. This is a big and a touchy subject for many of the participants on the webinar who are already maybe discussing things, but this is not exactly the thing that we are discussing here. Similarly, if we go to the payment service providers, that what they are thinking. We believe many a time, beside other things, awareness of payment modes becomes a challenge, right? Alternate digital methods, how they can apply those things, the user experience which they have to face, the KYC area, the banking whole compliance regime, right? The payment service providers do complain about it, right? It's easier to pay the cash, or it's easier to hand over the cash in this chain where they have to pay or receive than to getting onboarded, going for the transparency, going for the KYC, right? Opening accounts, and all those things take time, which businesses don't consider appropriate to waste time, and they're not feeling secure participating in this whole channel. And for those, for example, in the IT industry or for in the other areas, what's happening is we also, as I just said, that PayPal and these kind of payment providers will soon be available in Pakistan, but many of the survey participants has expressed that we really need someone which is internationally acceptable. Either our own PSPs should be well recognizable, or we should allow the international ones so that cross-border trade and digital payments may be enabled. Similarly, in terms of COD, there's again a behavioral concept, right? Even on cash on delivery orders, the merchant feels that it may not be exactly the genuine order. On the other hand, the customer is skeptic that I may not be getting what I have ordered, right? So that behavioral cognizance needs to be built. And that trust, as I said, that is on the commercial side of the transaction rather than on the payment side of it. Similarly, the integration of these gateways, the interoperability, right? And the ability of that delivery team to accept the payments in a digital format. Then there is a perception on the payment service provider side is that the MDRs or the merchant discount rates or the costs of making digital payments or the payment gateway fee, all these are appearing technical, but all these are burdens. So we need to understand that these are business costs and should be built and recovered in your margin. So these are the maturities which our market needs to go and talk about. Similarly, on the technical and the logistics side, what we have learned is that the simple question is, कि यार मैं क्यों digital mode को अपना? What incentive that I have? On the other hand, I have a fear of getting documented and then exposed to the whole tax enforcement regime. Similarly, there's very less, because culturally we are cash-based economy, there's very less understanding of the cost of handling cash. The security issues and all those things. And the overall turnaround time of completing the transaction increases because of the cash movements. Nobody is taking that in account, but they're happy accepting cash on that. I think technology integration becomes a challenge, and interoperability and convenience of a user experience, which will enable in combination all of them to talk about. Now, I would like to move on for pardon me, because waqt kam hai, and we really need to cover this in this half an hour. Had there been more time, I would have taken questions here, and if there are ambiguities, we should have addressed. But stay with us. After 10-15 minutes, when I complete this, we will open the forum and go into more detail in a Q&A session where the real industry players who face these things on a day-to-day basis, they will see that how our recommendations, which I'm going to explain now, are going to address not all, but some of these, achieving the objective of expediting the digitization in this e-commerce domain. Now, first of all, as I said, that we were discussing the challenges from the players or the stakeholder side. But when we are, as Taimur said, we are designing an overall intervention plan where we can see that what intervention can be made. Another similar and simple slide that I want to use, that we have divided these recommendations into trust building activities, improvement of the payment ecosystem, logistical infrastructure. As I said, in the logistics, there are a lot many challenges that we need to address. Improving the regulatory environment and addressing those issues like Taimur said on escrow and other areas. And similarly, improving financial and digital literacy. We believe that still there are many people who don't know how beneficial and quicker and efficient and business friendly is going digital than doing it on a cash basis. So the first recommendation we have put is the escrow service. As I said, that there is a trust deficit between the customer and the merchant, right? May it be because of the logistics or the delivery people, or may it be many a time our merchants are dealing with other sub-merchants who are operating various warehouses or production centers. So their own value chain is so distributed that they have lesser visibility or control over the overall supply chain, which ends up delivering a commodity to the end consumer. So when those controls are weak, there are chances that the platform may be very good, the merchant may be very decent and gentle, but the overall supply chain issues may render ultimately the goods which were not ordered. And to build or mend this trust, we need someone intermediary, that even if you make a payment in advance before the delivery, right, through the digital channel, creating the seriousness or genuineness of the order, right, then if you're not satisfied, right, the payment can be put in an escrow where it is there till you click the satisfaction button and you accept the delivery which you have received. Right? Again, there are modalities, there are legal issues, it's a financial element to it, which the regulators would have to see. And we have designed this recommendation as an actionable item, and we will see that how this can be implemented. The number two that we have recommended, and these are not all, these are some select ones where we have decided that we can get benefits, right? So the second one is, there should be an online business review platform. Just like very quickly, I can talk about the trust pilot in the US, the crowd reviews in Bangladesh, or a mouth shut in India. So these are the examples that are available in the region, whereby I think our own merchants or people who are selling online, they need to understand as businesses that how customer is expecting the whole value chain to operate for him or her, right? So this will help. It's not a shaming platform only, right? But it will help the new businesses or newcomers in the business to really understand or take the pulse of the customer, that what are the don'ts of this whole process. And this will help them take a maturity journey and they can move forward. In terms of improving the payment ecosystems, refund SLAs and service commitments, right? Disputes, customer experience, again, the same overlap can be there for the trust, but these will bring in efficiencies and trust to the payment system, right? Where we can have the SLAs between the merchants and the payment service providers, establishing their accountability and responsibility as well, that all the orders and refunds are very timely processed, right? Similarly, the tokenization or PCI DSS, because we are dealing with personal information, and information storage is people are very skeptic. If I have to store my data about my card, right? Currently, honestly, I'm also very, very skeptic that this may be misused. But these certifications and these utilities, I would call, are available. And our merchants should very, very quickly adopt those so that this will help improve the payment cycles and build the trust to the customers. Similarly, we have observed, and from the banking industry, where we work, there's a general tendency to hold the deposit, right? And it usually happens, and unfortunately, this has been the traditional approach of the financial services providers. But nowadays, you may be aware that there are 5 digital banks coming who will directly work with merchants, acquire them, provide them the platforms for the payments, and real-time payment settlements will be happening. So how those digital banks really operate? They operate on the flowing deposit. So the more the volume of the business, the more deposits or more money will flow through your system, and that flowing deposit will give you the return that you want, plus the fee and the margins that when you participate into that, you share the whole business value chain. So when that is coming, the conventional banks, where there is a tendency that sometimes for some orders, they hold transactions for 24 hours or more than that. I think we have to go for a same-day settlement regime for all transactions, and I think technologically this is possible. Another issue, and recently even on the gasoline sales area, हमें बहुत problem हुई, right? To have people understand this MDR. There are 4 parties to it. There is like service provider, there is a card issuer, there is an acquirer, and they all share. But primarily the card issuer is taking the most amount of this whole digital payment scenario. So what we are recommending here is that, like other market practices or the regional markets, we need to do a tiered approach to this, that everybody is not taking that amount of risk, right? For smaller transactions or for simpler businesses, right, the MDRs can be reduced, and still it becomes commercially viable for those participants. So this recommendation will be explored, and we have designed a program around it. Maybe first we do it as a pilot and then take it to the scalabilities. Similarly, there's another recommendation we are putting on, that we should enable the delivery teams to accept digital payments on delivery. We have primarily a cash on delivery market. Okay, you want to make sure that what you have received, so that you only want to make payment after delivery, but make that payment digitally. So that is another option that is there. What is the infrastructure cost for that? How many POS would be required? And all these kind of things. But we have seen in the food delivery business that this works many a times. Similarly, on the other hand, for all cash on delivery orders, the supplier or the merchant is really skeptic that is it a genuine order or not. So a solution that we are recommending to that is partial prepayment on COD orders. So this is another area to reduce the RTOs. Similarly, on the regulatory side, we are recommending an e-commerce accreditation platform. So that accreditation examples are there. You can see Iran, Singapore, Hong Kong, right? So that accreditation will have verified check that this is a trusted e-commerce participant, right? They have gone through a whole review journey. They have gone through the certifications or accreditation, right? So that platform will help in our view. And what are the modalities? We can discuss those in detail with the team that I have, and Adam and Omar can throw more light on that. Similarly, incentivization is not happening. Continuously, the survey participants were asking, what difference will it make? First, we have to initially incentivize those things. And that incentivization would require funds. And I think, as I said in the start, it has to be government-led or the catalysts like Karan does. We should explore that, what kind of incentives and what are the impacts if those incentives are provided. So that's one of the recommendations. As Taimur said, we are not a data-driven economy or a market. So building the data collection and building a data lake or a concept of centralized data where for all the policy making stakeholders like the government, the central bank, Karandas, even the merchant associations, they can take cognizant decisions which are data driven and data backed. So we need a database for these things. Honestly, in my first report, we really struggled to identify how many merchants or micro merchants were their shops. सादा लफ्जों में हमारे यहाँ कितनी दुकानें हैं, कितने businesses हैं, इनकी कभी कोई census हुई है? Honestly, last one was done like 15-20 years ago. And all other reports are just extrapolating, and we are saying those are 5.3 million. So we are not data backed, right? So we need to start collating data and analyzing it in such a manner that it can give better highlights for the decision makers and the policy makers. As I said, RAS and P2M, mobile wallets, these are all evolving and wonderful objectives. And we all are thankful to Karanda's team and LPP team. They are really improving it again and again, and we will see that RAS will give us the overall tool whereby everyone can use it very freely, and the transaction costs are reduced, and the reliability is there, and the backing of the government is there. Similarly, we have recommended that awareness campaigns on digital payments and BNPL and other service integration should happen for building the approach of adopting to this digital agenda. So these are some of the recommendations which we have discussed and deliberated with Karandas, and we have converted into an overall intervention plan which they will take forward. So I should stop here, and this is another one of the slides that some of the interventions will be done on a pilot to scale model. That in this intervention plan, we'll do it on a pilot basis, and if it is successful, we will hand it over to a bigger market player to scale it up. Similarly, ecosystem enablers, it's a continuous activities that should happen, and then policy and regulation working directly with the regulators to improve the regulatory frameworks and implement what are already there. I think I'm stopping here, and I'm stopping the share as well. And Heather, you can take it forward from here and take it to our panelists.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah and Nadeem, for presenting those insightful findings and interventions. The floor is now open for questions. I would request you all to type in your questions in the Q&A section, or raise your hand and the moderator will enable you to speak, obviously if time permits. Mr. Adam Dawood will be fielding your questions and engaging our discussion with our working group. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everyone from the Karandas team, and thank you, Nadeem Saab, as well, for sharing the findings with everyone. As you all have seen, we've come up with a lot of recommendations that hopefully over the next few months will start moving forward, and we'll start seeing some work being done on them. One of them has already gone live. Did a prepayment on delivery as well, which the Karandas team took live a few weeks ago, earlier this month. And we're hoping something will happen on that as well very, very soon. In terms of questions, I know there have been a lot of questions in the chat, and I think we've answered quite a few of them. But what we can do is I'll take some of the questions already there, and I'll sort of start answering them live as well. So we have a question on the implications from data protection bill currently in draft, very specifically. I don't think I'm best placed to answer this right now. Anyone on the panelists who knows about the data protection bill specifically and how it applies to what we're trying to do? I know from our standpoint, so our suggestions include that all data, especially card data and payment data, has to be sort of protected very specifically in terms of the PCI DSS regulations that are there. So PCI DSS regulations are created by the PCI panel, which was started by Visa, MasterCard. And anyone who sort of correctly implements their procedures, there's never, I believe, been a data breach for anyone who's correctly implemented their systems and so on. So it will generally be safe. So, and all the banks have to go through this process anyway. And anyone who's saving card details from the payment gateways to the banks or the e-commerce systems have to get verified with the PCI Council anyway.
I guess Aswin has Aswin, if you want to speak. Yeah.
Adam, I can sort of help you just on this topic because we've been involved in sort of looking. There were various bills. One is the personal data protection, and there's the e-safety bill, and there's one or two more. Some are in the draft stage, but this personal data protection, I think you touched upon the financial data of the customer, which is very in most cases already there are safeguards. मिसाल के तौर पे जो कार्ड की डिटेल है उसके लिए वैसे भी जब वो कार्ड की इंफॉर्मेशन डालते हैं तो वो बैंक या फिनटेक या पेमेंट प्रोवाइडर के ही वेबसाइट पे ही जाके डाल रहे होते हैं, तो वो इंफॉर्मेशन मर्चेंट के पास वैसे भी नहीं होता। जहाँ तक उसकी बात है कि जो ऑर्डर्स की जो डिटेल है, फॉर एग्जांपल कस्टमर का नाम, उसका फ़ोन नंबर, ईमेल एड्रेस और जो उसका फिजिकल एड्रेस है, ये वो डेटा है जो कि ज़ाहिर है कस्टमर का मर्चेंट के पास आ रहा होता है, जिसके लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है कि मर्चेंट्स उसको सेफगार्ड करें। अब उसके अंदर डेटा प्रोटेक्शन बिल के अंदर दिस इज़ डेफिनेटली लेजिस्लेटेड, लेकिन अभी तक मेरे ख्याल में इस तरह का डेटा लीक होने के नहीं होने के ज़्यादा सुना हमें, बट ये इंपॉर्टेंट है कि मर्चेंट उनका ख्याल रखें, लेकिन चाहे वो COD कर रहे हैं, डिजिटल पेमेंट ले रहे हैं, कुछ भी कर रहे हैं, तो आई थिंक डिजिटल पेमेंट्स तो सेफ हैं, बट आई थिंक जो चैलेंज है वो यही है कि ऑर्डर का डेटा इंपॉर्टेंट है कि मर्चेंट सेफ गार्ड करें। और जहाँ तक मुझे मालूम है कि आई थिंक मेजॉरिटी ऑफ मर्चेंट्स ने भी तो सेफ गार्ड किया हुआ है, ये शेयर नहीं हो रहा होता है ये इन्फॉर्मेशन, बट ये कवर तो करता है डेटा प्रोटेक्शन बिल। थैंक यू।
Okay, we'll go to another question now. So we have a question by Muhammad Fatim. Given the current initiatives to digitize cash on delivery in Pakistan, could you elaborate on the subject of chargebacks, particularly addressing the challenges faced by merchants with international transactions? Moreover, I'm interested in learning about the approaches merchants can take to proficiently manage the fraudulent activities on prepayment orders. So again, very important question. So merchants, especially new merchants who are doing prepayments for the very first time, when they start have chargebacks and so on start coming in, it does sort of become difficult for them to understand how it works and things like that. And what's key over here is a lot of training and having standard operating procedures between the payment gateways and the merchants on how to sort of handle these elements. And what's also key is ensuring that the communication basically goes through very easily between these two players and potentially the customer if required. And while merchants do learn as they go along, as standardizing these processes, I think will help a lot, given every payment gateway sort of works slightly differently as well. So we've sort of made recommendations on that as well. And Fawad, do you want to add to this as well?
Sure. Yes, Adam, I would like to add to that. Okay, so the thing is in chargebacks. So from my experience, जो मैंने देखा है, I'll try to speak in Urdu as much as possible. तो मैंने जो चीज़ देखी है from my experience chargebacks में, तो इसमें दो चीज़ें हैं। एक तो देखिए local transactions और एक international transactions हैं। लोकल ट्रांजैक्शंस में पाकिस्तान के अंदर तमाम जो कार्ड्स हैं वो 3DS कंप्लाइंट हैं, ठीक है। 3DS के ऊपर चार्जबैक के अंदर स्कीम के रूल्स जो हैं वो बहुत क्लियर हैं कि फ्रॉड इज़ नॉट अ रीज़न फॉर चार्जबैक. इट कुड बी related to delivery, it could be related to goods, but fraud is not a reason for chargeback. मैंने बहुत सारे मर्चेंट्स को देखा है कि वो जब इंटरनेशनल जा रहे होते हैं तो क्योंकि यूएस के अंदर लॉट ऑफ कार्ड्स आर स्टिल नॉट 3DS कंप्लायंट ऑन द इशूइंग साइड, दे आर 2D, तो दे एक्चुअली डिसाइड कि नहीं यार हमें 3DS के अलावा हमें 2D भी चाहिए, ठीक है, और हमें 2D कार्ड्स की एक्सेप्टेंस चाहिए, और 2D कार्ड्स की एक्सेप्टेंस पे चार्जबैक जो है वो एज पर द स्कीम रूल्स इज डायरेक्ट. दैट मीन्स यू डोंट हैव any sort of a process to cover yourself from any chargeback that's raised if it is a 2D transaction. So merchants को यहाँ पे ये educate होने की भी ज़रूरत है कि what sort of services creates what sort of liabilities on them related to chargebacks. So like you said, it's very important that merchants are educated on what sort of integrations when they will do, उसके क्या उनको repercussions होंगे, उनको क्या क्या information अपने पास रखनी चाहिए chargebacks को protect करने के लिए, उनको invoice कितने अरसे तक अपने पास hold करने की ज़रूरत है, उनको proof of delivery अपने पास किस तरह से रखने की ज़रूरत है, merchant का customer का data किस तरह से रखने की ज़रूरत है. So all that is very important to educate to the merchant. Merchant can be protected against chargeback if the merchant is aware of the scheme rules to chargebacks.
Thank you, Fawad. Fawad, while we have you here, there's another question we have on escrow as well. So in the scenario of prepayment escrow, what benefits will merchant have to hold the money in escrow in case of dispute scenario, considering the current buyer mindset? Further, how it will be economical for buyer and seller without the addition of service fees?
Okay, so look, I have a perspective on escrow. I'll share that with you and the forum. So regarding the benefits, तो सबसे पहले तो advantage क्या है, merchant को advantage क्या है, customer को भी advantage है, merchant को भी advantage है. देखिए आज भी कैश ऑन डिलीवरी, अगर कैश ऑन हम बेसिकली बात कर रहे हैं कैश ऑन डिलीवरी को डिजिटल पेमेंट्स पे कन्वर्ट करने के लिए, तो कैश ऑन डिलीवरी के ऊपर जब आज मर्चेंट कोई चीज़ भिजवाता है तो बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस होते हैं मर्चेंट की साइड के ऊपर. उसको नहीं पता होता है गुड्स एक्चुअली उसके अगेंस्ट कैश मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा. दैट मीन्स हायर रिटर्न्स ऑन ऑन ऑफ ऑर्डर्स. ठीक है, उसकी इन्वेंट्री भी आउट हो जाती है, उसको नहीं पता होता कि उसकी सेल रिकॉर्ड हुई है या नहीं हुई है, एंड टिल द टाइम द सेल इज एक्चुअली बहुत सारे केसेस के अंदर कैश ऑन डिलीवरी का जो कैश का टर्न अराउंड टाइम है दैट्स मोर देन 15 days, right? So there are a lot of challenges on cash on delivery, and when you convert that onto an escrow, merchant can actually be sure कि customer के payment deduct हो गई है. That means if he delivers, he is going to get paid. मर्चेंट को ये भी पता है कि अगर उसने जब वो डिलीवर किया है उसके फौरन बाद उसको पैसे मिल जाएंगे. सो ही डज नॉट नीड टू नेसेसरीली वेट फॉर 15 days or 16 days for return of his liquidity. It's just that he delivers in 2 days, he'll get paid the third day. So escrow के अंदर there are multiple advantages. When it comes to dispute, of course, dispute handling is one thing for which escrow needs to have an arbitration process. An arbitration process which is accepted by the consumer and the merchant both. और उस arbitration process में जिस तरह से हम अभी chargebacks की बात कर रहे थे, there are rules which are defined which the merchant has to provide as an evidence for delivery and for the commodity that was to be delivered, the details of the order. Once that rules are agreed, then it's a simple arbitration process that needs to be followed. Is there anything else that needed to be answered in this?
Just one element on that is on the service charges. So obviously this service itself can't be free. So, and would the customer end up paying for this? Would the merchant, or what benefits would the merchant see for paying, say, service charge?
So how I see this, that escrow needs to be more of a regulatory intervention, more than a commercial intervention. So yes, this cost needs to be either subsidized by someone or taken up by someone as a platform, or if it is being added, of course, the current costs to the merchant on cash on delivery, if educated to the merchant, are much higher than just the MDR. And with this escrow, it can be actually reduced and passed on to the merchant. But what I also believe is that as you do a prepayment, the merchant would be and the customer would be in a better position, since the digital payments are coming in and their total cost of operations decrease, to be able to fund this platform rather than charging it on a transactional basis.
Yep, makes sense. Again, the key part of escrow is we've talked a lot about the trust deficit there is between merchants and customers. You're putting in effect a trusted third party in the middle who can guarantee that trust then to handle the disputes and everything if something comes up. Let's move on to another question. So we have a question: do we have any benefits for merchants in post-payment transactions so that they can also encourage the buyers for this? I'll take a small crack at this, and then Sandhya, if you could sort of add on as well. So immediately, as one of the things Fawad just said as well, is if the merchant is getting the money beforehand, he in effect is getting a guaranteed order as well. So, he doesn't have to worry about when the logistics company will make the pay him. He'll get the money in generally 2 to 3 days rather than 7 to 15 days. He's also ensuring that he doesn't waste any logistics cost as well. Because whenever you're sending out a cash on delivery order, for any refusal that happens at the doorstep, that's a guaranteed logistics cost that you're sort of bearing. Plus, you're leaving your stock, you are out of stock for that moment in time until the item comes back to you. So there's a ton of benefits for the merchant as well. And I believe the customer as well, but we just have to help push this sort of system along. Sandhya, anything from your side?
Yeah, I agree with you. उसमें देखें, number one is of cash flow. Number two is आपके returns कम होगी और logistics cost आपकी कम लगेगी. मेरे ख्याल में वो तो एक I think no brainer है. जो challenge आता है, I think benefit एक और जो को ये benefit मेरे ख्याल में प्री पेमेंट के लिए भी होगा और पार्शली डिजिटल पेमेंट ऑन डिलीवरी के लिए भी होगा. तो आई थिंक डिजिटल पेमेंट जब हम देखते हैं और जब रिपोर्ट में भी लिखा हुआ है कि इट कैन बी, आई मीन डिजिटल पेमेंट कैन बी आइदर प्रीपेड या इट कैन बी अ डिलीवरी. तो अगर अब दोनों केसेस में हम देखें तो अगर पेमेंट ऑन डिलीवरी भी, डिजिटल पेमेंट ऑन डिलीवरी को भी अगर हम इसको अच्छी तरीके से रोल आउट कर सकें, स्पेशली विद रिगार्ड्स टू P2M, तो मेरे ख्याल में वो पेमेंट डायरेक्टली फिर मर्चेंट को जाए बजाय वो लॉजिस्टिक प्रोवाइडर के थ्रू जा रहा हो. तो आई थिंक दोनों सूरतों में बेनिफिट है. एंड आई थिंक इसमें आपके सिर्फ जो एक थोड़ा चैलेंज जो हमने देखा है जो इससे रिलेटेड है कि बाज़ औक़ात इशू आता है कि कस्टमर के रिटर्न रिफंड पर्सपेक्टिव से कि कस्टमर के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से उनको कभी कभी आपको एज ए मर्चेंट इंश्योर करना होगा कि भी आपकी रिफंड का जो और मैकेनिज्म है वो जल्दी आप दे सके कस्टमर को. वो बस एक बेनिफिट एक तरह से तो है ऑफ कोर्स ऑल दीज थिंग्स, बट यू हैव टू मेक श्योर यू आर प्रिपेयर्ड टू बी हैंडल डिजिटल पेमेंट, जो कि इतना मुश्किल काम नहीं है, बहुत सारे लोग कर रहे हैं. थैंक यू.
There are two other elements. So part of the recommendations we've given is to sort of help this along is partial prepayment on orders as well. So that's one of the recommendations we've given. So, while full prepayment would obviously be ideal to help sort of push this system along, if a partial prepayment can come in at the time the order is placed, that at least covers some of the risk, the logistics costs, and for the merchant as well. So that is something that would help. Ji Nadeem Saab.
I think the direction of the questions is towards the cost, and as a financial analyst or an accountant, see, we need to see the growth or added orders or the growth in the market that is being targeted here. Right? If currently we have a scenario of, for example, there's a 1 billion or 10 billion rupees market, और उसमें से जो है वो COD जो है वो 90% है, 80% है, तो हो क्या रहा है? There is a lot of cash handling happening, जिसकी pilferage होती है, जिसकी insurance होती है, और जिसकी चोरी होती है. All those things from the merchant side are there. Merchants are skeptic कि ये order guaranteed नहीं है. Customer is skeptic कि जब तक deliver नहीं होगा मैं नहीं दूंगा. So this will all increase the overall TAT of existing transaction, and this is not letting the business to grow. Any growth in this market, उसका जो भी margin है वो merchant का revenue है. So we cannot always be the cost sided और transaction level पे हमें cost sided नहीं होना है. हमें business level पे growth mindset के साथ इन objectives को देखना है. All the interventions are aimed at increasing and improving the market. I stop here.
Yes, Sandhya.
Just want to add कि एक और जो हम देख रहे हैं ना कि एक और इशू यही है कि भी आपका कैश की हैंडलिंग के जो कॉस्ट हम नहीं देख रहे होते हैं, लेकिन मर्चेंट उस लेंस से देख रहा होता है कि जी मेरी फिक्स कॉस्ट है लॉजिस्टिक्स की. चलो नंबर 2 मेरी अगर प्रोडक्ट जा रहा है वापस आ रहा है उसका टाइम पीरियड बाद हम नहीं गिन रहे होते हैं. तो मेरे ख्याल में वो एक कॉस्ट को देख, और फिर जो हम सबसे बड़ा जो एक दो और चैलेंजेस जो हमें नजर आ रहे हैं कि डिजिटल पेमेंट अगर एक तो मर्चेंट अगर तैयार है डिजिटल पेमेंट एक्सेप्ट करने के लिए और चाहता है कि जी हाँ जी मैं कन्विंस्ड हूँ कि जी मुझे डिजिटल पेमेंट्स ज़्यादा मिलेंगे तो मेरी बिजनेस में स्केल कर सकूंगा, मेरे मसले मसाइल कम होंगे. बट आई थिंक इसमें जो डिजिटल पेमेंट लेने के हवाले से एक और जो थॉट, बट आई थिंक जो I'll come back to it, but I think आप continue करें. I'll just come back to that point. Thank you.
No, but the cost element is critical, both from the merchant side and see the logistics company as well, as Nadeem Saab mentioned as well. There's a huge cost on there, and you have these other economies that sort of start with the insurance that they have to take out. Plus, every delivery that takes place, so a normal delivery, a normal parcel delivery would take your rider 2 to 3 minutes on average, whereas a cash on delivery order ends up taking anywhere between 7 to 12 minutes. So, all of that leads to higher costs overall. So the less cash on delivery there is, even your logistics costs can be reduced as well.
बिल्कुल. And my point I wanted to bring up, sorry, was that कि MDR अभी कार्ड पेमेंट्स के ऊपर MDR का एक चैलेंज नजर आ रहा है कि उसकी परसेंटेज ज़्यादा होती है, लेकिन जब आपके पास बहुत सारे लोग हम चेक कर रहे थे कि हमारी तरफ फॉर एग्जांपल IBFT और रास की पेमेंट्स ऑलमोस्ट 10% हमारे ऑर्डर्स की अब उसके जरिए पेमेंट्स हो रही है, काफ़ी कोई तो इससे भी ज़्यादा होगी, तो उसकी तो जो ट्रांजैक्शन कॉस्ट है वो बहुत मिनिमल है, तो और ना होने के बराबर है. तो आई थिंक वो इसकी अपटेक जो है वो बढ़ने के चांसेस बहुत ज़्यादा है विद द रास P2M जब जैसे ये इम्प्लीमेंट होगा अक्रॉस द बोर्ड. तो मेरे ख्याल में जो हमें सबको एक इशू होता है कि भी ये 2.5% 3% जो बहुत सारे केसेस में चार्ज हो रहा होता है आपके टोटल ऑर्डर वैल्यू के ऊपर, ज़ाहिर है जब स्पेशली जब आपके पास हाई वॉल्यूम आइटम होते हैं, लो मार्जिन आइटम होते हैं, आप ये नहीं बेयर करना चाहते, इसका भी हल मेरे ख्याल में ऑलरेडी मौजूद भी है और वो अब जो रोल आउट होने जा रहा है रास P2M उससे भी बहुत फर्क पड़ेगा.
No, absolutely. I mean, the MDR is in effect a direct cost that hits you right in your face, whereas the indirect costs of cash on delivery are much higher. The direct costs are very low comparatively. We have another question here, which I will take with both Asfandiar and Fawad. So one from the retailer point of view, the merchant point of view, and one from the payment gateway point of view. What percentage of credit card transactions and debit card transactions end in dispute? What percentage are these disputed transactions of the total value of transactions? So any sort of high level ideas on those numbers? Fawad, from a payment gateway side on your end, and Asfandiar on the merchant side from your end.
So I don't know. I don't have those numbers, frankly. Haven't studied debit cards versus credit card disputes, but it is highly likely that the credit card transactions that we get go in much more smoothly than debit card transactions, but don't have any sort of numbers to back that up.
From personal experience, I can give you a bit of information कि डिस्प्यूटेड ट्रांजैक्शन जैसे कि फवाद भाई पहले भी बात कर रहे थे कि 3DS कार्ड यानी कि जिस कार्ड और जिस ट्रांजैक्शन के लिए आपको जो OTP भेजा जाता है SMS के जरिए और आप डालते हैं, तो वो तो उस डिस्प्यूट तो बहुत ही मिनिमल हो जाती है बिकॉज आपके फ्रॉड के चांसेस बहुत मिनिमाइज हो जाते हैं. यस, फ्रॉड कस्टमर साइड पे होती है जब आप कोई एप्पल स्टोर और बाकी चीज़ों पे जहाँ पे 2D ट्रांजैक्शन हो रही है जिसमें OTP नहीं मिलता आपको, वहाँ तो एक इशू है फ्रॉड का. लेकिन पाकिस्तानी मर्चेंट्स और जो गेटवेज लगे हुए हैं कार्ड के हवाले से तो डिस्प्यूट्स बहुत मिनिमल है. हमारे केस में आई थिंक अंडर 5% हमारी कोई डिस्प्यूट ऐसी होती है जो कि हमें रिजॉल्व करनी होती है, और वो बहुत सारे केसेस में डिस्प्यूट इस तरह का तो नहीं होता यही है कि मुझे रिफंड चाहिए, मुझे प्रोडक्ट समझ में नहीं आया, आप वापस ले लें, मुझे रिफंड कर दें, तो हम फिर उसको प्रोसेस कर देते हैं. तो वो डिस्प्यूट भी नहीं होता बिकॉज वो पे सिंपली एक रिफंड का प्रोसेस है. डिस्प्यूट तो तब राइज होता है जब मर्चेंट कहता है कि नहीं जी मेरे ये टर्म्स हैं, इसको आप नहीं फॉलो किया तो मैं आपको ज़ाहिर रिफंड नहीं दूंगा. तो आई थिंक हमें एक और पॉइंट इसी से जो पॉइंट एक निकलता है वो ये है कि हमें एज मर्चेंट्स, और हम इसको प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं और भी लोग प्रैक्टिस करते हैं जो हमारे ब्रांड्स हैं, काफ़ी सारे रिटेल ब्रांड्स खासतौर पे, कि रिफंड और जितना आप आसान करेंगे उतना कॉन्फिडेंस कस्टमर का बेहतर होता है डिजिटल पेमेंट के हवाले से. हम फॉर एग्जांपल मल्टीपल तरीकों से अगर क्रेडिट कार्ड की पेमेंट है तो क्रेडिट कार्ड के पोर्टल से ही रिफंड कर देते हैं ताकि उसी कार्ड पे उनको रिफंड मिल जाए. अगर COD की डिलीवरी थी और कस्टमर को पसंद नहीं आया या वो चेंज ऑफ माइंड बाद में प्रोडक्ट रिसीव होने के बाद भी 30 दिन के अंदर होता है, तो हम उनको किसी इजी पैसा जायज़ कैश से भी रिफंड कर देते हैं ताकि उनको एटलीस्ट अगर कैश से उन्होंने पे किया तो हम उनको फिर डिजिटल मोड के थ्रू रिफंड कर देते हैं. तो इस तरह की चीज़ें अगर हम करेंगे, मर्चेंट ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस दिलाएंगे कस्टमर को, तो वो तो उनकी डिजिटल पेमेंट के जो बिहेवियर है, aside from all the other issues in terms of whether they have the access to that digital payment instrument, वो काफ़ी कम लिमिट होना शुरू हो जाता है. और हमने ये एक्सपीरियंस किया है कि हर महीने ग्रोथ आ रही है हमारी, हमें इंसेंटिवाइज भी करना पड़ता है कस्टमर को डिजिटल पेमेंट के लिए, लेकिन फिर वो बिहेवियरल चेंज खुद ब खुद आ जाता है, कस्टमर को याद भी नहीं होता कि इंसेंटिव है या नहीं है, डिस्काउंट है या नहीं है। ऐसे भी केसेस होते हैं।
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does take a little bit of effort, but I think for the most part, it is something that we can sort of push along. We have another question here. So, from Raza, is the soft POS option also explored in this study? If not, then how does the panel see it in our space? So this is the option where I think at the time of delivery, you have a person can basically take a card payment or any sort of RAST payment or QR code payment as well at the time of delivery. So this is an option that's already been put forward and proposal went live. Temur, or would you like to sort of quickly take this question and give any high level on what may be coming out of it?
Ji, could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So soft POS, there has been experiments in the market, and we are part of two such interventions. The important thing to note is that when we talk about soft POS, the target audience has to be tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Do they have the enablement to adapt or adopt such channels is a major question. What we have seen with our intervention is that smartphones usually are not available. The ones which are available are not NFC enabled, and the ones which are NFC enabled might not be in a condition of time. B, if we want to go look at the distribution model, it has to be digital. An app has to be installed. If we target tier 2 and tier 3 cities, do we have the muscle to kind of go beyond digital and kind of help users learn the system by going physical? There's a major question around it. So with these challenges around, I believe soft POS experimentation has to continue and a sweet spot has to be identified. Karanda's view is to use the philanthropic capital to do the experimentation so that we have answers for the private sector before they themselves start, putting in money and without a view start failing in the domain. So that is where our grant money would, flow in and support the private sector. Daud, I believe the answer is there. If there is something left, I'm happy to take more questions around it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Demo. We have another question from Kareem. Is there a specific law in Pakistan which applies to e-commerce transactions where customer does not get what they ordered for? I'll quickly answer that. I don't believe there is. A customer, though, does have the right to sort of go to consumer court and basically file any sort of complaint over there, because an e-commerce merchant is just a normal retailer at the end of the day. I don't believe there's anything specifically for e-commerce merchants, right? The second question is, right now, it's not clear if a customer is paying via RAST and have an issue where they paid online, but did not get what they ordered, who they will complain and what are the timelines. Unless scheme rules are clearly established, which are balanced for both customers and merchants and known to both the people, will be okay to adopt. Is Karandas working on RAST P2M rules? I think this is a much bigger
So I
question.
can quickly take this one. The question is, Karanda's working on P2M rules, right?
Yes.
So see, what Karanda's role is to have the infrastructure ready in order for the intervention to start getting adopted in the market. I also believe that rules or part of scheme is has to be part and parcel with that. However, that is where the regulator comes in and introduce certain rules. while the technology is ready, the launch is ready, the rules are basic and they are out in the market. For a new thing, I believe the experimentation has to happen for the rules to be dynamically managed and articulated for something that needs to be expanded. So the answer to the question is yes, but are they mature enough? No. Will they get mature? Of course, yes. And that is the journey that we all have to go through.
I think again, I'm speaking with much less experience on this now, but I think one of the key things here is the customer will always generally end up dealing with the merchant anyway, and the merchant will then go to whichever payment gateway is sort of integrated. Because, like, for example, if I'm paying with a credit card right now, the merchant and I file a dispute, the payment gateway might belong to, let's say, bank A, but my card might be with bank Y. So, all those things happen, and this is where the payment gateway usually comes into place anyway. And then within the payment gateway and between the merchants and then everyone else, you basically have the rules and everything established. So I think for the most part, this will run through between the customer and the merchant, and then the merchant and the payment gateway that's sort of in between. Because again, many payment gateways today offer multiple payment methods anyway. So you can pay with credit card, you can do Jazz Cash, Easy Pesa, or even certain bank transfers with one link and so forth. So I think it'll generally, the customer will always end up going to the merchant, and then the merchant deals with the payment gateway and so forth. What other questions do we have? We have a comment. Daraj charges ₹30 cash handling charge for COD and provides discounts on card payments. I think this is a good strategy and should be promoted. Here's a good question. How much growth are you forecasting from the proposed recommendations? In what time frame? I think, Temur, I think you can potentially take this as well, but from my side, I can maybe add a little bit. So we've looked at potentially how much growth could come in, but again, these will just be small pilots that eventually will start sort of going through, depends on how sort of Karandas takes it forward. They've already put one project forward already, which was the prepayment on delivery. And hopefully over the next sort of few months, more will sort of start launching. Temur, do you want to add anything to this?
So very quickly, before I make a comment on this part, I really want to take that question, the comment where Diraz is charging 30 rupees for cash and delivery handling. I believe that can be good for earning money, but is that really translating into transition from cash to digital is a question. I mean, consumer might take the pain of paying 30 rupees in exchange of at least receiving something even before paying for it. So that strategy could work for offsetting some of the cash handling cost at the raw side, but will that trigger any consumer behavior is still a question. To the question on impact, I think that is something which is unforeseen, too vast. Me making a comment doesn't. I don't have that qualification to actually, make a claim here that this will impact a larger or a certain number in Pakistan. But what we do foresee is that there is a hurdling going on to start addressing something which has been there for some time. And setting a direction for the industry is something that is going to be our contribution here. If I really were to pin down an impact number, we believe that going from, let's say, supposedly 25 to 30% digital payments in e-commerce to 55 to 60% digital payments in e-commerce in next 3 years is something that we eye on, and that is really going to be an achievement as an industry for all of us.
Thanks. A question by Mohammed Ali Qureshi. Is there any escrow established yet in Pakistan along with all the other digital reforms and digital payments? I don't believe there is one right now. Fawad, maybe you can just clarify.
No, unfortunately, there is not. So there has been efforts in creating an escrow platform, but usually, I think technically and operationally, that there is no challenge in creating one. One thing that we are right now discussing is the policy, escrow policy, and the arbitration policy that would govern this escrow. Once that is done, I think rest is very simple. So it has to be backed by the regulatory and the government frameworks. Once that is there, escrow is something that can be delivered fairly easily.
Thank you so much. I will take one last question. Timur, I think this will go to you as well. Will the introduction of RAST P2M result in lower MDR for the merchants?
So certainly, yes. If you compare it to a card-based payment, which usually charge around 2.5 to 3% inclusive of tax, that is certainly going to go away. The settlement, the intermediaries are way too simpler and too less to in a P2M transaction as compared to a card-based transaction. So it's naturally inherently going to be lower cost. Is the consumer willing to pay if the price is shifted towards consumer? That is a question which remains. But if the merchant is absorbing the cost, and with the introduction of P2M, that cost goes down, this is certainly going to support a certain push by the retailers or merchants for a digital payment from their consumers. If I were to give you a number, I think we can safely assume anything less than 1.5% is possible.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Timur. Heather, I'll hand it over back to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. I hope this session proves to be a successful one. If you have any questions or feedback, or any questions that were left unanswered, kindly reach to us on our emails. The full report that KPMG has crafted is also available on Karandaz's website. I would like to thank the panelists once again. Your engagement has been invaluable. Let's carry forward these recommendations into actionable interventions and continue driving positive change in the realm of digital payments. Stay connected, and until next time, wishing you success on your digital e-commerce journey. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining.